Lieutenant Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his brow as he navigated through the twisted corridors of the abandoned research station orbiting Kepler 442b. The emergency beacon had been broadcasting for 3 standard days before the Colonial Defense Force decided to investigate. What they found was a massacre. The station's crew of 200 lay scattered throughout the facility, their bodies drained of blood in ways that defied medical explanation. No wounds, no trauma, just pale corpses with expressions of terror frozen on their faces. The investigation team had found evidence of something far worse than pirates or hostile aliens. Marcus's scanner beeped softly as he approached the station's central laboratory. The readings were off the charts for bioenergy signatures, but the life signs were weak and fading. His team had split up to cover more ground, leaving him alone in this section. Standard protocol dictated he should wait for backup, but those life signs wouldn't last much longer. The laboratory doors hissed open to reveal a scene that made his stomach turn. Scientific equipment lay smashed and scattered across the floor, mixed with more bodies. But, in the center of the room, sealed within a containment cell designed for the most dangerous specimens, sat a figure that made him freeze. She appeared human at first glance, but something was fundamentally wrong. Her skin held an otherworldly pallor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Long, silver hair cascaded over her shoulders, framing a face that was beautiful in the way that predators were beautiful. But it was her eyes that truly unsettled him. They glowed with a faint crimson light, and, when they fixed on him through the containment barrier, he felt his heart skip a beat. The woman was clearly dying. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, and her body trembled with weakness. Whatever she was, the research team had been studying her, and their work had apparently cost them their lives. Marcus approached the containment cell cautiously, his weapon drawn but not aimed. The woman's head turned to follow his movement, those unsettling eyes never leaving his face. "Human," she whispered, her voice carrying an accent he couldn't place. "You smell different from the others. Stronger. What are you?" Marcus asked, keeping his distance from the barrier. "I am what your kind would call vampire," she replied with effort. "Princess Lyralii of the Sanguine Courts. These fools thought to study me, to learn the secrets of my people's longevity." She gestured weakly at the carnage around them. "They learned, but not what they expected." Marcus felt his training kick in. Vampires were legends, stories told to frighten children. But the evidence was all around him. 200 people dead, drained of blood, and a creature that claimed responsibility sitting before him. "You killed them all," he said, not making it a question. "I defended myself," Lyralii corrected. "When they began their experiments, when they started taking my blood by force, I had no choice. But now..." She slumped against the wall of her cell. "Now I am dying. The process of feeding on so many at once, it has poisoned me. Human blood, it seems, is not compatible with my physiology in large quantities." Marcus studied her carefully. She didn't look like a monster now, just a dying woman trapped in a cage. But he'd seen what she was capable of. "My people will come for me eventually," Lyralii continued. "But not in time. I have perhaps hours left, maybe less." She fixed him with that unnerving stare again. "Unless..." "Unless what?" "Your blood, human. It calls to me differently than the others. There's something about your genetic structure, your life force. It might be compatible." She pressed herself against the barrier, and Marcus could see the desperation in her eyes. "A single donation, freely given. It could save my life." Marcus stepped back instinctively. "And why would I help you? You just admitted to killing 200 people." "Because," Lyralii said, her voice growing weaker, "if you don't, my death will start a war that will consume your entire sector. The Sanguine Courts don't forgive the death of royalty, especially not at human hands. They will glass every world in this system as retribution." The weight of her words settled on Marcus like a physical force. He'd heard rumors of the Sanguine Courts, ancient powers that existed in the dark spaces between systems. If they were real, if this woman was truly one of their princesses, then her death here would indeed bring catastrophe. "What guarantee do I have that you won't just kill me too?" he asked. Lyralii smiled, showing fangs that gleamed in the laboratory's emergency lighting. "None, human. But you're a soldier. You understand necessary risks." Her expression grew serious. I give you my word, on my royal blood, that I will not harm you if you help me. Marcus holstered his weapon and approached the control panel for the containment cell. His finger hovered over the release mechanism as he weighed his options. Save a monster and, potentially doom himself, or let her die and, definitely doom billions. Marcus made his decision and pressed the release button. The containment field flickered and died, leaving only a transparent barrier between him and the vampire princess. Lyralii looked surprised that he'd actually done it. You're either very brave or very foolish, human, she said, struggling to stand. What is your name? Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Colonial Defense Force, he replied, reaching for the medical kit on his belt. If we're going to do this, we do it properly. I'm not just going to let you bite my neck like some horror vid. Lyralii actually laughed, a sound that was both melodic and unsettling. Your caution is wise. The feeding process can be intense. She gestured to a nearby chair. Sit. I will need to maintain contact with you during the exchange. Marcus sat down and began preparing a blood draw kit. How much do you need? Not much by human standards. Perhaps half a liter. But it's not just the blood itself that sustains us. It's the life force within it, the essence of the donor. That's why it must be freely given. Forced feeding provides only temporary sustenance and eventual poisoning, as these researchers learned. She moved closer, her steps unsteady but graceful. Up close, Marcus could see the intricate tattoos that covered her arms, symbols that seemed to shift and move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Her scent was strange, like ozone and old flowers. These markings, Marcus said, nodding at her tattoos, what do they mean? They tell the story of my lineage, my accomplishments, my binding to the royal court, Lyralii explained. When I die, they will fade, and the Sanguine Empire will know that one of their children has been lost. She knelt beside his chair. Which is why your assistance is so crucial. Marcus inserted the needle into his arm with practiced efficiency. Military life meant he was used to blood draws, vaccinations, and field medicine. But, as his blood began to flow into the collection bag, Lyralii placed her hand on his wrist, and everything changed. The moment their skin made contact, Marcus felt a surge of sensation unlike anything he'd ever experienced. It wasn't pain, exactly, but an intense awareness that seemed to flow both ways between them. He could feel Lyralii's thoughts brushing against the edges of his mind, her relief and gratitude, but also her surprise. Remarkable, she whispered, her eyes widening. Your life force, it's incredibly strong. How is this possible? Marcus tried to focus through the strange connection. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a regular soldier. No, you're not, Lyralii said firmly. There's something different about your genetic structure. I can taste it in your essence. Her grip on his wrist tightened slightly. Tell me, Lieutenant Chen, what is your ancestry? Where do your people come from? Earth, originally. My family's been in the colonies for 3 generations. Nothing special about us. But, even as he said it, Marcus remembered the stories his grandmother used to tell about their family line, tales of ancestors who seemed to live longer than they should, who recovered from injuries with unusual speed. The blood bag was nearly full when Lyralii suddenly stiffened, her head turning toward the laboratory entrance. Someone approaches. Your team? Marcus hadn't heard anything, but he trusted her enhanced senses. Probably. They'll be looking for me. He started to disconnect the blood draw, but Lyralii's hand stopped him. Not yet. I need just a little more. Her voice had taken on an urgent quality. And, when they arrive, you must not tell them what transpired here. Say you found me dead already. Why? Because if they learn what I am, what we've done, they will try to weaponize it. Your people will attempt to study me, to replicate the process. They will fail, just as these researchers failed, and many more will die. The laboratory doors opened with a hiss, and Sergeant Rodriguez entered with 2 other soldiers. They took in the scene with professional calm, though Marcus could see the tension in their postures. Sir, we've been looking for you, Rodriguez said. What's the situation here? Marcus quickly disconnected the blood draw and palmed the collection bag while Lyralii collapsed against the wall, her eyes closed and breathing shallow. Found another survivor, but she's in bad shape. Massive blood loss. Rodriguez approached cautiously. Any idea what happened here? Lab accident, by the look of it, Marcus lied smoothly. Some kind of pathogen that causes rapid blood loss. The containment systems failed. He stood up, hiding the blood bag in his medical kit. We need to evacuate and quarantine the station. One of the other soldiers, a young corporal named Kim, moved closer to Lyralii. Sir, she doesn't look human. Look at her skin, her bone structure. Marcus felt a moment of panic, but Lyralii opened her eyes slightly and gave him an almost imperceptible nod. Alien species, Marcus said. Probably one of their test subjects. We'll need xenobiology to examine her properly. Rodriguez nodded. Copy that. Kim, get a stretcher. We'll transport her to the medical bay on the ship. As the team prepared to move Lyralii, she caught Marcus's eye again. Through their brief connection, he could feel her communicating somehow without words. The blood he'd given her was working, restoring her strength, but something else was happening too. The exchange had created a link between them, something neither of them fully understood. When they lifted her onto the stretcher, Lyralii's hand briefly brushed against Marcus's arm. The contact sent another surge of that strange awareness through him, and he heard her voice in his mind as clearly as if she'd spoken aloud. You have bound yourself to me, Marcus Chen. Whether you intended to or not, we are now connected. I will not forget this debt, nor will I be able to leave your side until it is properly repaid. Marcus tried to respond mentally, but the connection faded as they carried her away. All he was left with was a strange tingling sensation in his blood and the growing realization that his simple act of mercy had just changed his life in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. 3 days had passed since they'd brought Lyralii aboard the CDF cruiser Defiant, and Marcus was beginning to understand just how complicated his situation had become. The vampire princess had recovered far more quickly than anyone expected, much to the excitement of the ship's medical staff. Dr. Sarah Walsh, the chief medical officer, had been studying Lyralii around the clock. The alien woman had cooperated fully, submitting to every test and scan while maintaining her cover story as a surviving research subject. But Marcus could feel her presence constantly now, a warm awareness at the back of his mind that grew stronger whenever they were near each other. Lieutenant Chen, report to Medical Bay 3 immediately, came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Marcus made his way through the corridors, nodding to crew members as he passed. The Defiant was a small ship, only 300 personnel, and word traveled fast. Everyone knew about the mysterious alien survivor they'd rescued from the research station. When he arrived at the medical bay, he found Dr. Walsh reviewing data on her tablet while Lyralii sat on an examination table. The vampire princess had been provided with standard civilian clothing, but somehow she made this simple gray jumpsuit look regal. Ah, Lieutenant, Dr. Walsh said without looking up. I wanted to discuss some anomalous readings we've been getting. Marcus felt a spike of concern. What kind of anomalies? Well, our friend here has some fascinating physiological adaptations. Enhanced strength, improved reflexes, accelerated healing. But the really interesting part is this. She turned the tablet toward him, showing a complex biological scan. Her blood work shows traces of human genetic material that definitely wasn't there when we first brought her aboard. Marcus kept his expression neutral despite the alarm bells going off in his head. Contamination from the research station? That's what I thought at first, but the integration is too complete. It's as if her body has actually incorporated human DNA into its own structure. Dr. Walsh looked genuinely puzzled. I've never seen anything like it. Symbiosis at the genetic level. Lyralii spoke for the first time since Marcus had entered. Doctor, I believe I may have answers to your questions. Both humans turned to look at her. Walsh leaned forward eagerly. Please, anything you can tell us would be helpful. My people have the ability to form what we call a life bond with other species. It's a survival mechanism that allows us to adapt to different environments by incorporating beneficial traits from local life forms. Lyralii's explanation was smooth and believable. The researchers at the station were studying this process. Incredible, Walsh breathed. So you can essentially evolve in real time? To a limited degree, yes. But the process requires a willing participant. The donor must freely offer their genetic material for the bond to take hold properly. Marcus realized where this conversation was heading and tried to cut it off. Doctor, I think we should focus on making sure our guest is healthy and ready for transport to command. But Dr. Walsh was already lost in scientific fascination. The applications could be revolutionary. Think about it, Lieutenant. Adaptable soldiers who could survive in any environment, enhanced healing factors, improved physical capabilities. She turned to Lyralii. Would you be willing to participate in further studies? With proper volunteers, of course. I would need to consult with my people first, Lyralii replied diplomatically. Such bonds are not entered into lightly. After Dr. Walsh dismissed them, Marcus walked Lyralii back to her quarters. The ship's corridors were busy with the evening shift change, giving them some privacy to talk. That was close, Marcus said quietly. She's getting suspicious. Dr. Walsh is intelligent, but she sees only what she expects to see, Lyralii replied. A scientific opportunity rather than what really happened between us. They stopped outside her quarters, and Lyralii turned to face him. Marcus, we need to discuss the bond that's formed between us. You can feel it too, can't you? Marcus nodded reluctantly. Like a constant awareness in the back of my mind. Sometimes I think I can hear your thoughts. That's because you can. The blood bond creates a permanent connection between donor and recipient. In my culture, such bonds are sacred, usually formed only between mates or the closest of allies. What does that mean for us? Lyralii stepped closer, and Marcus felt that familiar tingle of connection strengthen. It means that I am bound to you until the debt is repaid. I owe you my life, Marcus Chen, and, by the laws of my people, I cannot leave your side until that obligation is fulfilled. Marcus ran a hand through his hair in frustration. How is it supposed to be repaid? What do you need to do? I must save your life in return, or perform some service of equal value to what you gave me. Lyralii's expression grew serious. But, there's more. The bond is affecting you as well. Your body is adapting, incorporating aspects of my physiology. You're stronger than you were before, your reflexes are faster, your healing improved. Marcus thought back to the past few days and realized she was right. He'd been sleeping less but feeling more energetic. A cut on his hand from broken glass had healed overnight. He'd beaten his previous records in the ship's gym without really trying. Is that permanent? He asked. I don't know. In my experience, most humans cannot handle the changes. They burn out quickly, their bodies unable to cope with the enhanced metabolism. Lyralii looked genuinely concerned. But, you're different. Your genetic structure is accommodating the alterations in ways I've never seen. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's alarm system suddenly blaring to life. Red warning lights bathed the corridor as the captain's voice came over the communication system. All hands to battle stations. We have unknown contacts dropping out of hyperspace. Multiple vessels, unknown configuration. Marcus immediately started moving toward his duty station, but Lyralii grabbed his arm. The contact sent a jolt of awareness through both of them, and, suddenly, Marcus could see what she was seeing in her mind. Sleek, dark ships with organic curves and weapon arrays that gleamed like obsidian. Sanguine court vessels. They've found me, Lyralii whispered. My people have come. Is that good or bad? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. That depends entirely on what they think happened to me, she replied grimly. If they believe I was killed by humans, they will destroy this ship and everyone on it. If they discover the bond between us. She trailed off. What? Then, they might try to take you with them, whether you want to go or not. Lyralii looked directly into his eyes. Marcus, I need you to trust me. Whatever happens next, follow my lead and don't contradict anything I tell them. The ship shuddered as something powerful locked onto them with a tractor beam. Through the nearest porthole, Marcus could see one of the alien vessels approaching, its hull seeming to absorb light like Lyralii's skin. Looks like we're about to find out how good your diplomatic skills are, Marcus said. Lyralii squeezed his arm once more. Remember, we are bound now. Whatever they decide about me, they will decide about you as well. I won't let them harm you, but you must play your part. As they felt the ship being drawn inexorably toward the sanguine court vessel, Marcus couldn't help but think that his simple act of mercy was about to become far more complicated than he'd ever imagined. The docking bay of the Sanguine Court vessel was unlike anything Marcus had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with a dark, organic energy, and the air itself felt thick with power. Bioluminescent veins ran along the ceiling, providing an eerie blue-green glow that cast shifting shadows everywhere. Marcus stood beside Lyralii as they faced the welcoming committee. 5 figures awaited them, each one clearly of the same species as the princess but bearing themselves with an authority that made Marcus's skin crawl. They wore elaborate robes that seemed to be made of living shadow, and their eyes glowed with the same crimson light as Lyralii's, but brighter and more intense. The figure in the center stepped forward, and Marcus immediately understood this was someone of great importance. Where Lyralii projected regal beauty, this being radiated ancient power that made the air around him shimmer. "Sister," the figure said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "When your life signs vanished, we feared the worst." "Lord Commander Valeth," Lyralii replied, bowing her head slightly. "I apologize for the concern I have caused the court." Valeth's gaze swept over Marcus with obvious displeasure. "And yet I find you not only alive, but accompanied by a human. Explain." Marcus felt Lyralii's mental touch, a gentle pressure against his consciousness. Through their bond, he could sense her carefully choosing her words. "I was captured by human researchers who sought to study our physiology. When their experiments threatened my life, I was forced to defend myself, resulting in their deaths. This human found me dying and chose to render aid." "Aid," Valeth repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of that concept. "And what manner of aid did this human provide?" "He freely offered his blood to sustain me when my own reserves were depleted." The temperature in the docking bay seemed to drop several degrees. The other 4 Sanguine Court members moved closer, forming a circle around Marcus and Lyralii. Marcus could feel their power like physical weight pressing down on him. "You formed a blood bond with a human," one of them hissed. "Lyralii, such an act is forbidden without court approval." "It was a matter of survival, Lady Nyx," Lyralii replied calmly. "The alternative was death, which would have brought dishonor to our bloodline." Lord Commander Valeth circled them slowly, studying Marcus with predatory interest. "Show me your arm, human." Marcus looked to Lyralii, who nodded almost imperceptibly. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing the small puncture mark where he'd drawn his blood. But Valeth wasn't interested in the wound itself. Instead, he grabbed Marcus's wrist with surprising speed. The moment the Sanguine Court Lord made contact, Marcus felt as if electricity shot through his entire nervous system. Valeth's eyes widened in surprise, and he looked at Lyralii with something approaching shock. "This is impossible," Valeth breathed. "His essence, it's already adapting. Already changing." He released Marcus's wrist and stepped back. "How long since the bonding?" 3 days, Lyralii answered. 3 days, and he shows no signs of rejection or burnout. His life force is not diminishing but growing stronger." Valeth looked at Marcus with new interest. "What is your lineage, human?" "I don't understand the question," Marcus replied honestly. "Your ancestry. Your genetic heritage. There are bloodlines among humans that carry traces of older powers, remnants of contact with species like ours in your distant past." Marcus thought of his grandmother's stories again, tales of ancestors who lived uncommonly long lives and possessed unusual abilities. "My family has always been long-lived, but I never thought much of it." "Show him," Valeth commanded Lyralii. "Brother, are you certain? The revelation could be traumatic for him. He is bonded to one of royal blood. He has the right to know what he has become." Lyralii moved closer to Marcus, placing her hand on his chest. "Open your mind to me completely. Don't resist the connection." Marcus nodded and lowered his mental defenses. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Through Lyralii's enhanced senses, he could suddenly perceive things that had been invisible to him before. The Sanguine Court members weren't just standing there, they were radiating fields of bioenergy that interacted with each other in complex patterns. The ship itself was alive in some way, its organic systems pulsing with purpose. And, most startling of all, he could see his own energy field, which had somehow changed from the pure blue-white of human life force to something that flickered between blue and the deep crimson of vampire essence. "By the ancient bonds," Lady Nyx whispered. "He's becoming one of us." "Not entirely," Valeth corrected. "He retains his human nature while gaining our abilities." such hybrids were thought to be legends. Marcus pulled back from the connection, overwhelmed by the sensory input.
What does this mean?
It means, Lieutenant Chen, Valeth said, using Marcus's rank for the first time, that you are now something unprecedented. A human sanguine hybrid with the potential for abilities neither species possesses alone. And it means, Lady Nyx added with obvious displeasure, that you cannot be allowed to return to human space. The knowledge you carry, the power you're developing, it could destabilize the careful balance we've maintained for centuries. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature.
You're saying I'm a prisoner?
You're saying we have a choice to make, Valeth corrected. You can remain here, in our space, and learn to master your new abilities under our guidance.
Or... He left the alternative unspoken.
Lyrelii stepped protectively closer to Marcus.
He saved my life. By our laws, he is under my protection.
Your protection may not be enough, sister, Valeth replied. The court will need to debate this matter.
A human with sanguine abilities could be seen as either a valuable asset or a dangerous threat.
One of the other court members, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was older, carrying the weight of centuries.
There is precedent, though it is ancient. The human shows signs of carrying dormant sanguine genetic markers.
Such bloodlines were created long ago, during the first contact between our species. Elder Thane speaks wisdom, Valeth acknowledged. If this human truly carries the old blood, then, perhaps the bonding was not an accident but destiny.
Marcus looked between all these powerful beings discussing his fate as if he weren't there.
The human part of him wanted to rebel, to demand his freedom and return to his ship. But, the changing part of him, the part that was becoming something else, recognized the truth in their words.
What happens to my ship? My crew, he asked.
They will be allowed to depart unharmed, with memories adjusted to show that you died heroically in the research station, Valeth replied.
It will be a cleaner end than the truth. And, if I refuse to stay? The silence that followed was answer enough.
Lyrelii's hand found his, and, through their bond, he felt her genuine regret.
I'm sorry, Marcus. I never intended for this to happen.
The blood bond was supposed to be temporary, just enough to save my life. I didn't know it would change you so completely. Marcus squeezed her hand, drawing strength from their connection.
What's done is done. But, I want something in return. Valeth raised an eyebrow. You are hardly in a position to make demands, human.
Maybe not, but you need me cooperative, not resentful. If I'm going to be stuck here, if I'm going to become whatever it is I'm becoming, then I want guarantees that my people won't be harmed.
That this incident won't be used as an excuse for war. And, what do you offer in exchange for such guarantees? Marcus looked at Lyrelii, then, back at the assembled court members. My service. My loyalty.
And, whatever abilities I develop as this hybrid you're all so interested in.
Valeth smiled, showing fangs that gleamed in the bioluminescent light. Now you begin to think like one of us, Marcus Chen. Very well. We have an accord.
6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Sanguine Court flagship, watching human space through eyes that could perceive far more than they once had. The transformation was nearly complete now, and he barely recognized the man he'd been. His physical changes were dramatic but subtle. To human eyes, he would appear to be in perfect health, perhaps a bit pale. But, to sanguine senses, he radiated power that marked him as something entirely new. His strength had increased tenfold, his reflexes were superhuman, and wounds healed in minutes instead of days. More importantly, he'd developed abilities that neither species possessed individually. He could interface directly with sanguine biotechnology while retaining human intuition and creativity. He could survive in environments that would kill either pure humans or pure sanguines, and his mind could process information at speeds that amazed even the ancient court members. Brooding again? Lyrelii's voice came from behind him. Marcus turned to see her approaching, dressed in the formal robes of a court princess. Their bond had deepened over the months, evolving from a survival necessity into something that felt remarkably like love. Though neither of them had spoken the word aloud.
Thinking, Marcus corrected. About the intelligence reports from the border systems.
The situation in human space had grown tense. The disappearance of the research station and the death of Lieutenant Marcus Chen had sparked investigations that were getting uncomfortably close to the truth. Worse, some human factions were actively seeking contact with the Sanguine Courts, not for peaceful reasons but to acquire their biotechnology for military purposes. The court is convening again tomorrow, Lyralii said, moving to stand beside him. They want your recommendation on how to handle the situation. Marcus nodded grimly. This was the price of his hybrid nature. He'd become the bridge between two species, the translator who could explain human motivations to ancient vampires and sanguine capabilities to human strategists. It was a responsibility he'd never asked for but had learned to accept. There's going to be contact eventually, he said. The question is whether it happens on our terms or theirs. Our terms? Lyralii raised an eyebrow. You still think of humanity as us sometimes. Don't you? Marcus asked. Part of you is human now, just as part of me is sanguine. We're living proof that coexistence is possible. Through the bond, he felt Lyralii's complex emotions. Love, certainly, but also fear for what the future might bring. The court had accepted Marcus, even come to respect him, but they remained deeply suspicious of humanity as a whole. Lord Commander Valeth wants to use you as an infiltration agent, she said quietly. Send you back to human space to gather intelligence and report on their military capabilities. And Princess Lyralii wants to protect her bonded partner from being used as a spy, Marcus replied with a slight smile. Princess Lyralii wants to find a solution that doesn't end with one species destroying the other, she corrected. Marcus turned away from the viewport to face her fully. Over the months, he'd grown to appreciate the subtle beauty of sanguine features, the way their eyes reflected emotion in ways human eyes couldn't, the grace of movement that spoke of perfect physical harmony. There might be a way, he said slowly. But it would require both of us taking a significant risk. I'm listening. What if we didn't infiltrate or spy? What if we made contact openly, as ambassadors? You represent the sanguine courts, I represent the possibility of peaceful coexistence. Lyralii considered this. The court would never approve such a mission. The risk of exposure is too great. The risk of war is greater. And getting worse every day. Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing recent human fleet movements. They're mobilizing, Lyralii. Whatever they learned from the research station data, it's convinced them that the sanguine courts are a threat that needs to be eliminated. They're not wrong, she said grimly. If the court decides humanity is a threat, they have the capability to sterilize every human world in this sector. Which is exactly why we need to act. Before someone makes a decision that can't be undone. Lyralii moved closer, and Marcus felt the familiar tingle of their enhanced connection. You're talking about abandoning everything we've built here. If we reveal ourselves to humanity, there's no going back. Maybe it's time to stop hiding, Marcus said. I've learned a lot about sanguine history in these past months. Your people weren't always isolationists. There was a time when they worked openly with other species. That was before we learned the cost of such cooperation. Before we saw how our gifts could be perverted, weaponized, turned against us. Marcus took her hands in his, marveling at how natural the gesture had become despite their different origins. But I'm proof that it doesn't have to be that way. We're proof. Through their bond, he shared his vision with her. Not a future of conflict and suspicion, but one where human ingenuity combined with sanguine wisdom could achieve things neither species could manage alone. Where the barriers between them became bridges instead of walls. The court will never approve it, Lyralii said again, but Marcus could feel her wavering. Then, we don't ask for approval. We ask for forgiveness afterward. Before Lyralii could respond, an alert chimed through the ship's communication system. Lord Commander Valetha's voice followed immediately. All court members report to the primary chamber immediately.